I hear many people across Canada over the last number of years criticize the CBC, criticize their methods, criticize this, criticize that, even though there's a myriad amount of Canadian radio and TV channels they can listen to. They're take a freak because our tax dollars pay for it. But you know what? The CBC indirectly brought down one of the biggest gangs in Canadian history. A criminal organization that wasn't a mafia, but they were causing death and robbery and destruction across Canada. Of course, what we're talking about, during the first broadcast of CBC as a TV channel, this gang was the main story that evening. Lauren Green did the report. Of course, we're talking about the infamous Boyd Gang. Now, the Boyd Gang was a notorious criminal gang based in Toronto, named for its perennial leader, Edwin Alonzo Boyd. The gang was a favorite of the media at the time because of their sensational actions, which included bank robberies, jailbreaks, relationships with beautiful women, gunfights, manhunts, and daring captures. Now, Edwin Alonzo Boyd had committed a variety of crimes in his youth and served time in Saskatchewan's Prince Albert Penitentiary at the age of 22. Now, after returning from service in the Second World War, Boyd decided to rob a Toronto branch of the Bank of Montreal with a German Luger on September 9, 1949, while drunk, and escape with US $3,000, equivalent to $32,000 in 2019. With others, he committed 6 more robberies before he was caught and imprisoned in the infamous Don Jail. There he met Willie Jackson and Lenny Jackson, who were not related, and together they broke out of jail with a hacksaw concealed in Lenny's artificial leg. No, you can't make this shit up. Now, after their escape, they were joined by Valant Olesso, a.k.a. Steve Suchan, and committed 4 more robberies in 4 months for a U.S. equivalent of $75,000, which it would be $800,000 in 2019. Although Lenny Jackson, a hairdresser from Niagara Falls, led the group, Boyd's charms and good looks led the media to label them the Boyd Gang. Now, on March 6, 1952, Detective Sergeant Edmund Tong and his partner, Sergeant Roy Perry, stopped a vehicle containing 2 men, and these men turned out to be Lenny Jackson and Steve Suchan. As Tong approached the vehicle, Suchan drew a .455 pistol and shot him and Sergeant Perry in the police car, wounding the latter in the arm. Tong unfortunately died of his wounds on March 23, 1952. Now, both Jacksons and Suchan were arrested in Montreal after a shootout with police that left Lenny and Steve wounded. Both men were convicted and sentenced to death by hanging for the murder of the policeman. Boyd was eventually arrested separately in Toronto. Now, all 4 men were placed in side-by-side cells in the Don Jail, which, as we all know, would be a bad idea for any type of criminal organization. Now, on September 8, 1952, they managed to escape for a second time with the help of another saw blade smuggled in by a lawyer. That night, the CBC, in their first television broadcast, again, for you out there, the channel you all love to hate, was anchored by the great actor Lauren Green, a newsman, and produced by Harry Rasky, detailed the escape. And now, there's YouTube of this, the first report, where Green is basically saying these people are dangerous, you better watch out. Now, the jail's warden was eventually suspended for his lack of action in the case, and a $26,000 reward, which is equivalent to, I would figure, I don't know, $250,000 now, was offered for information leading to arrest. Now, what it did, it took the Boyd Gang from being praised by the media to be chastised by the public, because all of Canada were watching that night, because, again, the first night for CBC. And what did he see? A group of people that were holding a part of Ontario hostage. Now, 10 days later, the group was discovered hiding in a barn about a mile north of Shepherd Avenue and Leslie Street, after Willie Jackson went to Yonge Street and Shepherd to North York to buy food and cigarettes. Now, Lenny Jackson and Steve Suchan were quickly tried for murder, although they were defended by prominent lawyers Arthur Baloney and John Josiah Robinette, respectively. Both men were found guilty and sentenced to death. While Jackson had not fired a shot at Tong, he had essentially confessed on the stand, which undoubtedly hurt their case. They were executed in a double hanging at the Don Jail in December of 1952. So we're looking at, late September, early October, and execution by December. Edwin Alonzo Boyd, who had not been present for the murder, was defended by Frederick McMahon and sentenced to 8 life terms plus 27 years concurrently. Now, Willie Jackson was sentenced to 31 years, and both served their time in the infamous Kingston Penitentiary. Jackson was eventually released on parole in '66. Boyd was released earlier in 1962, but returned to prison for 4 more years after parole violations. He then moved to the west coast of Canada, where he changed his name and remarried. Now, journalist Brian Vallée, who interviewed an aging Edwin Alonzo Boyd for Edwin Alonzo Boyd, has alleged that Boyd was also responsible for the unsolved 1947 murder of George Vigas, an Irish Scot in Toronto's High Park. Now, there's been various documentaries and movies and stuff. Gordon Pinson played him in a very important telefilm. There was a documentary by the Fifth Estate, and the information that Edward Alonzo Boyd had provided about the other murders were provided by him. So it was very much an Alan Legier meets what do you call Gambino-style mafia situation. Now, the 2011 film Citizen Gangster, which was can be seen on various Canadian pay channels, depicts the life of Edwin and his gang. It premiered at the 2011 Toronto International Film Festival, and its theatrical release was in May 2012. The movie changes the identity of the detective whose death is described above, and materially changes the circumstances of the shooting. There is also a play written by John Roby and Ray Story, based on the events called Girls in the Gang. Now, there's various archives you can check on this. First is Toronto's infamous Boyd Gang, which is in the CBC archives. Now, there's also a book called The Boyd Gang by Marjorie Lamb and Barry Pearson, which is Peter Martin Associates, published in 1976. And the Gordon Pinsent movie is probably one of the best productions he was involved with during his long and prestigious career. Now, the name of that Gordon Pinsent movie is called The Life and Times of Edward Alonzo Boyd. Now, it's based on the Lamb Pearson book, and of course, having Gordon Pinsent at Edwin Alonzo Boyd plays a big role. Now, on IMDb, it basically is a very high-rated movie, 7.4, and it has various lines that allegedly were said by Boyd or were said later on. And his most famous one was, "They had the money, and I was interested in getting it." Now, there's some ramifications of the other information was come in. Some people believed he wasn't a true murderer. He wasn't the type of person that could have done the crimes, but that allegations of those unsolved murders back in the day kind of showed that there was something going on. Now, the movie The Life and Times of Edward Alonzo Boyd shows up on TCM every once in a while if you can find it. If I'm not mistaken, it also there's a big article as well. I forgot that big article. It's called The Jovial Bank Robber, which appeared in Maclean's on April 18th, 1983, which talks about the movie. Now, it was a CTV production, which was kind of bizarre because most of these heritage productions would show on CBC. Now, according to Maclean's article, Gordon Pinson's depiction of gangster Edward Alonzo Boyd exudes an impish charm that verges on the fulsome. The aspects, of course, when you're dealing with stories about the Kingston Penitentiary, an infamous penitentiary, the Don Jail, an infamous jail, there was a whole bunch of people that were basically saying the reason why the case was so popular, the golden age of Canadian criminal activity, ladies and gentlemen, and it sounds weird, from maybe the mid-1940s to the double execution in the Don Jail in 1963, the last executions in Canada. So you're looking for a 10-15 month period. Of course, the plane bombing that led to several murders in Quebec, the Joe Richard case in New Brunswick, various multiple murders, crimes of passion, crimes of robbery, Each province, again, I think from, like I said, 1945, 46, post-war to 63. And of course, the Truscott murder case, where the man, the teenager alleged to have killed a young girl, and he was innocent. He was convicted of murder, and there was some question about if the death penalty was being administered correctly, because people were being executed for being bad pups. People were being executed for second-degree murder, not first-degree murder, or what is now second-degree murder. And there's never been there's no pardon in the Canadian system, by the way, unless you apply to our Commonwealth, House of Commons system. So the Boyd gang, again, bad people, but at the time they were romanticizing 1940s film noir, stuff like that. But like I said, when Gordon Pinson plays Edward Alonzo Boyd, probably one of the most important actors in North American history, so popular to call him more popular than Paul Newman at his height. You know why the Boyd gang remains legendary in Canada. And maybe one of these days they'll do a documentary that's really, really accurate, because most of the people that you could talk to about this case are either dead or don't want to talk anymore, because let the dead bury the dead, as we like to say. Have a good day. Bye.